I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. To be a discussion about electoral politics, the state of Black America, the African world, and so much more. So I want to welcome to the program a very special guest in studio live this afternoon is Mr. Tom Porter, as I mentioned before. And joining us by phone is Amiri Baraka, the world-renowned poet, author, activist, and writer. Welcome to the program to the both of you.
Good afternoon.
All right, how you doing?
All right. Want to let everybody know that we're going to be opening up the phones a little bit later at 202-588-0893, as I'm sure a lot will be said this afternoon that people want to join in the discussion of. Mr. Baraka, if we could, of course, start with you. And again, we welcome you to the program. It's always a pleasure to hear your work and have your presence on this program, even if it is at this moment that we disagree. I just want to introduce the readers to a little bit of what you've written here recently. Again, in the piece you've called "The Parade of Anti-Obama Rascals," and you say here just a little bit. I'm talking about another substantial pimple of so distant, dare I say, intellectuals and self-advertised radicals who are quite audible and wordy in opposition to Obama. Later you say, I mention all this because it is criminal for these people claiming to be radical or intellectual to oppose or refuse to support Obama. I hope we don't have to hear about the lesser of two evils from people whose foolish mirror worship would have us elect the worst of two evils. For those who claim radical by supporting McKinney or brain forbid the nadir of fake liberalism, we should have little sympathy. As much as I have admired Cynthia McKinney, to pose her candidacy as an alternative to Obama is at best idealism, at worst nearly as dangerous as when the nadir used the same windy egotism to help elect Bush. The people who are supporting McKinney must know that this is an empty gesture, but too often such people are so pocked with self-congratulatory idealism that they care little or understand little about politics, i.e. the gaining of or maintaining and use of power, but want only to pronounce to themselves mostly how progressive or radical or even revolutionary they are. So if we could, let's just start there. What beyond that is your concern with those of us who are supporting McKinney, and why should we support Obama?
No, I think that is just. I mean, you quoted it. I don't want to repeat it. It's a shadow contest. I mean, you all are making yourself feel good, but there's not much else happening. And on the negative side, no matter that Obama is pulling away, so-called. Remember there are always the people who claim to be liberals who, when they get in that booth, who revert to their dope addiction. Because Americans are you got a nation composed of a lot of junkies. They're addicted to a white supremacy, and what was the mayor of Los Angeles who lost Tom Bradley? They call it the Bradley effect, where he's leading in the polls and then loses the election, and they call it the Bradley effect. The Bradley effect is just, incipient racism that comes out. So I'm saying that if you understand the struggle between Obama and McCain, if you understand that basically, then you know to subtract any support from Obama is to help elect McCain, just like they did with the Bush Nader garbage, and that's essentially what it is. I mean, you might not like that, say, well, Obama's liberalism and so forth, yeah. But whatever that is, it's infinitely better than McCain. And to sit on the side and be radical and let McCain get elected, to me, is criminal, yeah.
Well, let me ask also, and then again, Mr. Porter, we'll bring you in just a moment. What has changed? Because when I was watching the Democratic National Convention, I actually felt as sad and depressed as I have felt in a long time in a political sense, and that what I thought I was watching was the fakery and the propaganda of positioning someone as change who really isn't. And one of the things I did actually was pull out the Amiri Baraka Reader, and I went back and read your 20-year-old now piece on your thoughts on the Democratic National Convention when Jesse was running. And
yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you was what over the last 20 years, if you could summarize and chart the change in the last 20 years that would would encourage you to want to support Obama now. And at that time, it seemed as though you were being critical of Jesse for pulling us away from more independent and radical politics.
I was critical of Jesse because Jesse would not finally run. Jesse got into the convention. You understand? In fact, I was with Jesse two conventions, if you remember.
Yes.
And he would not run. I begged him. I said, look, you ought at least, at this point, run for vice president. You know, you need to put your name in here. Maybe these liberals, because they're so drugged up now, they might do that. You know, I went around. As a matter of fact, I walked around the whole convention floor by myself and went to each one of these delegations, to the black caucuses in each delegation, and asked them to support, to come out with a voice vote for Jesse for vice president. They all refused, saying that Jesse had told them. When I confronted Jesse about that, he gives me this. He said, well, win in June, lose in November. That was his classic line. But my line to Jesse was to try to get him to be independent. What I see now is that Obama is more independent than Jesse was. I think that Jesse's runs were important. Don't get me wrong now. I think that was an important kind of emergence at that point. But I think now we have to see that we have to take this step. Now, nobody thinks that Obama is the end of monopoly capitalism. That's the other aspect of the dope addiction in the United States, white supremacy and monopoly capitalism. But we must see that Obama is a clear step forward above McCain, and that's what I'm saying. That's what I've been saying all along. I thought it was a step above Hillary Clinton. You understand? And I think it's a larger step above McCain. You know, one wonders, as my wife always suggests, you ought to have had less trouble if you'd had Hillary as the vice president. That might be true with this, this clown that they have running for vice president. But still, the question is Obama and his obvious the need to have him in there at another level of contradiction and discussion about what's happening in this country.
Now, if I can, let me turn to you, Mr. Porter. Something that you and I have talked about a number of times, and just flat out, honestly, not seeing it. I just don't see how Obama is a step in the progressive direction. And I see him more as masking all the difficult things ahead that we need to engage. What's wrong with that point of view? How is it that this is a step in the right direction, even with all his understandable, all the things that we could understandably criticize him with and for?
Well, first of all, I think that it's healthy to be critical. It's always healthy to be critical. But what I find strange in this discussion of Obama is Obama has absolutely nothing to do with the present plight of black people. He has absolutely nothing to do with that. So to blame him or to expect that he's a savior is wrongheadedness. On the other hand, as a person who has been involved in struggle, not talking but involved, I always found that it was necessary to know what time it was at any given time in history. And that is why I went to the Black Power conferences. That is why I went to the Gary Convention. That is why I went to the Black Independent Political. That is why I traveled with Jesse in 1984 every day. And I traveled with Jesse even though many times he'd asked me to work with him, and I didn't really want to work with him because I didn't particularly like his politics, but I thought that when we talked about his running for the presidency and what he thought he could accomplish, I thought it was a good thing. In the context that we're in today, I don't talk about Cynthia McKinney because Cynthia McKinney is one in a long line of African-American black people who've been used by the left to, quote, get their positions out there. The Communist Party used to do that every year. She's not going to win. That's why Gus Hall would always get somebody black to run with. She's not going to win. We know she's not going to win. And since Martin and Malcolm, there's not too much that she could really say about what's really going down, what has gone down. We could have stopped at Frederick Douglass. So that's a non-starter for me. I don't even discuss that. The fact of it is that in November, somebody's going to become president. And we can talk about drinking the Kool-Aid and all of the stuff we want to, but the vast majority of black people are caught in this trap. And some people say, well, there's no difference between McCain and Obama. There is. there's a significant difference between the two of them. The fact that whoever gets elected will be president of the United States, the fact is that 80% or 100% of black people will still be in America and will still be suffering from what we're suffering from right now. So the question becomes, in the context, not only the United States, but in the context of things changing in the world. And this is an international election. I've said this before. It's not a national election. And I've also said that Barack Obama will become the next president because the world wants him. Now, because the world wants him, we should say, well, why would we want him? If Warren Buffett wants him, we should be against him. That doesn't make any sense to me, because we're going to still be in this position. The problem that we have, and we talk about the lesser of two evils, we have to ask ourselves, why are we always choosing between the lesser of evils? And those are questions that we have to ask the Black Caucus. Those are the questions that we have to ask our black leaders. And those are the questions that we have to ask our brothers and sisters who go around talking about you're going to drink in the Kool-Aid. What have you done lately for the people? As Kwame Ture used to say, join anything as long as you join an organization. Most of these people are just alternative blacks. They're alternative to everything that black people talk about.
Well, let me ask this. This is, again, remind everybody, this is WPFW 89.3 FM, Midday Jazz and Justice. I'm Jared Ball, your host, here with you every Monday from 1 to 3 p.m. and very happy to be so on this Liberated Masses medium, joined by two towering and giant intellects, people I respect immensely. Amiri Baraka by phone, world-renowned poet, author, activist, and Tom Porter, who is also world-renowned and author and activist and a very good friend to this station and this program. But let me ask both of you that, just the issue you just raised, Mr. Porter, this issue of what are people doing to organize in or outside of a discussion of electoral politics or an Obama campaign. And my concern is not, again, that I'm blaming Obama for any of the problems. My concern is that Obama represents a distraction, a movement away from an encouragement to organize outside of this electoral process, including why I support McKinney in part is to encourage people to break away from the psychological attachment to this grand illusion that I think Obama represents. What does supporting Obama, or what have those who are supporting Obama done, similarly to what you've asked of those not supporting Obama, to organize the community to make sure our interests are realized regardless of who's elected?
I'm saying that. Go ahead, Amiri.
No, but see, you're missing the point.
Okay.
The question of organizing alternatives to monopoly capitalism does not exclude you fighting in the mainstream to advance this whole progress and this whole process in the system. To think that because there's a need for alternative organizing, that you somehow have to stay out of the mainstream struggle is the kind of small group mentality that we've been fighting now for a long time. The fact that 90% of the Afro-American people support Obama is very important, because it means those of us who think of ourselves as leaders in that community, if we don't understand why and at the same time try to transform that one impulse to an even higher impulse, then we're missing something. See, the question of organizing, don't you understand how much organizing has been done to get Obama in this position? You understand? And don't you understand that no matter what happens, if Obama wins, those people are going to be organized, or they're going to be to the point of being organized, be ready to be organized on another level. Don't you understand that kind of level of organization is critical? In 1972, the Gary Convention, the reason that there were so many people ready to be organized, 8,000 people that came to Gary, is because that was an election year. You understand? That was an election year. And the same kind of, organizing around that, quote, election, we were doing around the idea of bringing black people together so that they could say what they wanted to see out of that election. Now, what happened after that? I went to the convention, and the Negroes, all these civil rights Negroes that we so fond of talking about, the ones that wouldn't go for Obama in the beginning, I can name them, but there's no need to. I'm all them Negroes. They copped out then. They sold us out then at the Miami Convention in 1972, where McGovern got his behind beat by Nixon in the most worst one-sided whipping ever. You understand? The Negroes came down there from Miami and solely behind out the ones who had been placed in power. You understand? And what did that do? For then the next 5 or 6 years, those of us who were there endeavored to turn that struggle around anyway, because we could see by the time, I don't know, what it was, about 1975, they had thrown me out of the whole national black political assembly because I had become a Marxist. And part of that is my problem. I was so radical that I got excluded from that mainstream organization, when I should have listened to what Malcolm X said. No, you should get in there and try to organize those people to go further than they think now, because obviously whatever Obama does, there's going to be deep disillusion among the great majority of people who supported him, but there's also going to be an idea that power can be seized in this country through organization. The reason that Obama's even the candidate is because they out-organized Hillary Clinton. They understood what the internet was, this kind of internet generation, and they whipped Hillary to the bone. And that's why I know they're going to be McCain. I mean, short of the theft that we know these robbers are capable of in the last 2 elections. We should understand Obama's liberalism, like that $700 billion bailout. We should understand that, but it's up to us. You see, when Obama goes to the Israel lobby and cops to Israel, when he goes to the Gusano, the Cuban lobby, and soft shoes around that. Still, he's saying we need to talk to those people. McCain and them have not said it, although Bush now in his late dance out the door is trying to say something about talks. But we have to understand that it's on us. Where is our lobby? Where is the lobby that will make Obama cop to the things that we are pushing? You understand what I mean? So it's about power. And you cannot tell me that we will have more chance with the issues that we want to push with McCain than we can with Obama. That's craziness. You understand? McCain represents what has just happened in this country. He is a Republican. He's also a fake war hero. Somebody who copped out in Vietnam after 4 hours, 4 days. So, I mean, it's a question of what we will do.
It does remind me, and again, everybody's listening, that's Amiri Baraka joining us on Midday Jazz and Justice here at WPFW. And that last comment, I'm laughing because it reminds me of the hip-hop line where Jay-Z, talking about the love of 50 Cent, says, in our day, we respected the shooter. In today's world, you respect the one who got shot, which is what I think about every time I hear somebody talk about McCain's heroism. But I think, one of the concerns that I have is just that, and to those who are calling in, we're going to open up the phones in just a few more minutes, so please do be patient at 202-588-0893, 202-588-0893. But one of the concerns that I do have is, just as you were talking about, is, I mean, again, I don't see how, and again, I'm looking back at the piece you wrote, and I do recognize this is 20 years old and the context have shifted. But when you talk about, Jesse's statements about think of Jerusalem as the birthplace of 3 great religions, and then you ask, do the Israelis know that? As you say, that ran through your head. Well, that also ran through my head when I'm hearing you talk about Obama, and you're saying it sort of in a good way that Obama is willing to talk to the Israeli lobby. But I'm looking at this as he's even saying what when he said that Jerusalem would be the sole capital of Israel, he's even going beyond the conservatives and even some of the I guess, I don't know if you can call them left-leaning Zionists, to say that. I mean, it seems like he's going even further in the opposite direction.
But the fact of it is,
that context, like you say, you have to remember that context. The Israelis at that point were still, in terms of like the Zionists and so forth, they were still in many ways coming on like they were supporters. Remember the civil rights movement? You had the support of Jewish radicals. You understand? You probably still have that support, but Zionism had not come out to the extent of bulldozing its way through the Middle East the way it has since. You see what I'm saying? What Jesse was saying was like being optimistic about how to pull these 3 progressive segments together. But today, it's not the same thing. I mean, Israel has been revealed as an imperialist kind of oppressor nation. And you cannot say the same thing about them. What I was saying about Obama is that he talked to that lobby. Where is our lobby? That's why he had to talk to that lobby. He had to talk to them gusanos, them Cuban, them anti-Castro Cuban. He had to talk to them.
I think, Amiri, if I might add, so I think we have to be very, 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 very careful. I mean, every single president on the Democratic side that we voted for has basically said the same thing that Obama said. So we have to ask ourselves again, why are we in this position? Two people are running for president. The other ones don't really count. I mean, you can go ahead and run. I mean, I can run. I've been writing my own name in for the last 4 or 5 elections for president. I always won, but I didn't win anything. So the point of it is, it's either going to be McCain or it's going to be Barack Obama. Those are the two choices. You got to ask yourself, given China, given Venezuela, given India, given the various formations that are being formed in Latin and Central American organizations of states, given this, where do we fit into all of this? We don't fit anywhere if we standing on the sides holding our collective Johnsons. If we got problems with Obama, then we should have a proposition on the table. We should have a proposition. Where's our health care plan? Well, one of the things about the civil rights movement, the breakfast program, which the federal government now does, was started by the Black Panther Party. There's no innovation coming, so it's easy. I mean, Baraka talks all the time about forming a united front. Even if these people who run around here would get the independent schools to form a consortium, because all of them are in trouble. They're charging tuition, which is high because enrollment is going down. But the enrollment would go up if they formed a consortium. They could share teachers. They could share all of this. That's organization. And so with Barack Obama, we haven't put anything on the table since 1972, the Gary Convention. We haven't put anything on the table since then. We don't have a foreign policy position. Baraka talks about, because he was a Marxist, we need to be very, very clear. All of these people we talk about, Kwame Nkrumah, Amilcar Cabral, C.L.R. James, W. Du Bois, Chavez, Fidel Castro, on and on and on, they have one thing in common. They were all socialists.
All right, that's Mr. Tom Porter. I'm Jared Ball, and joining us by phone is Amiri Baraka to talk a little bit about this issue of Obama and electoral politics. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to open up the phone lines at 202-588-0893. And among the several things that I want to raise as a question is what then is happening here in terms of what I hear is all saying, actually, which is that we need to be developing an organized platform. We need to be putting it before Obama. And what I'm arguing is that Obama represents that which weakens our ability to develop that platform, as so many people are going to support him simply for his blackness. And it is being argued against me that a move to support Cynthia McKinney weakens our ability to offer that platform. So we'll be back in just a few minutes. This is WPFW 89.3 FM, Midday Jazz and Justice. I'm Jared Ball, here with you every Monday from 1 to 3 p.m. And don't forget that more on all that you're going to hear this afternoon can be found online at voxunion.com. That's V as in voice, OX as in Malcolm, union.com. And we will be back in just a moment after these brief messages. Don't go anywhere. Peace. We want to welcome back our guests, Mr. Tom Porter, who's live in the studio this afternoon, and on the phone, Amiri Baraka, talking with us a little bit about electoral politics, the condition and relationship to this electoral political season that Black America holds, and several issues related to that. So we welcome all of you back to the program. If we can,
yes,
sir.
Who was the person?
Yes,
recording.
What I was just going to get to is that we just heard a piece from the poet, Heru is his name. Heru speaks at yahoo.com is I think how you can reach him. And the track is called, as was pretty obvious there, Barack Obama, Septimius Severus, and giving his recitations on the subject. I'll offer a chance for each of you to respond if you have a response.
Well, I think to me, it's because he's a good poet, and I've heard him read before. But also it shows the difference between formal and symbolic logic, which is basically a Western phenomena, and dialectical logic, which is more Eastern. And one is symbolic logic, just to be very, very quick, teaches you how the forms of argument, how to argue and be correct, not necessarily to be substantively correct, but that's what happens. That's how O.J. got in trouble this last time. Dialectical logic, which the ancient Egyptians were first to deal with, which is a cornerstone of so-called Marxist and socialist thought, deals with the interconnectedness of things, the relationship and lawful relationships between things. And so it was very interesting, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Well, to me, see, stuff like that is like it might as well come out from the McCain for President Committee, because it does not take into all it can take into context to see. That's why I said this about this ego worship. Everybody who studies politics, who studies the situation, should know what's happening. You know what I mean? To run down a whole list of reasons why, write a poem about McCain.
Well, he actually has. To be fair to him, he has, and I just didn't play it. So that's
okay. Well, that's what you should be playing.
The other thing is, I mean, it was very, very interesting, but I think we spend far too much time studying our oppressors, studying what has happened to us. I think we should maybe minimize the study of slavery and start working on studying freedom.
So then if the question, so let me ask this then again, because, and then we do have a full bank of phone callers who have been patient enough to wait a moment to get on with the both of you, so we want to reward that. But there are a number of things that I want to raise, and maybe we'll pick some of this up in the next hour. But one of the reasons I don't want it to sound as though, at least for me, at least the argument is not based in just a lack of concern or a lack of awareness. It's just a profound concern about what is the response going to be. And I don't see Obama and voting for Obama and following the two major parties in perpetuity is leading us anywhere out of the cycle. So just going back a little bit, I found Du Bois's 1956 letter to the nation, Why I Won't Vote, where in part he says, in 1956, I shall not go to the polls. I have not registered. I believe that democracy has too far disappeared in the United States, that no two evils exist. There is but one evil party with two names, and it will be elected despite all I can say or do. And I was very moved by his call later in the letter that maybe he said it is a hope that if 25 million voters refrained from voting in 1956, and I would just say that if we could make that same claim that today that those voters would vote for McKinney, it would represent an important psychological break with the system as it currently exists, and we could move into something else.
You're taking that out of context.
I understand.
Do you know what was happening in 1956?
I do, but I just don't see enough of a difference today. I just don't see enough of a difference in terms of what's happening today.
First of all,
do you know what was happening? Why Du Bois said that? Number one, he was getting ready to go on trial as an agent of a foreign power. You understand? It was the height of McCarthyism. His trial was the first blow against McCarthyism. You understand? That was the first blow against McCarthyism. But he says, after that, now the children will no longer hear my name. In other words, that was another period. You're fighting against McCarthyism. What I'm saying now is to have a candidate that is clearly distinct from the McCain Republican juggernaut. I mean, it's absurd. I mean, here's McCain trying to remake himself in 2 days as a maverick. Even the Maverick family from Texas has complained and said, no, we've been leftists and progressives, and for you to take our name is insulting. But what Du Bois was talking about then is in McCarthyism, since both of those parties were supporting McCarthyism to the extent that they were, because it was Eisenhower that tipped it off, and the Democrats did little to oppose it. That's what he was saying. He was making his statement. Another couple of years, he would be joining the Communist Party. You know what I mean? Again, to show his disdain for this particular process at that time. But times have changed. When you say all of the stuff in the civil rights movement, do we dismiss that? Dr. King and them, what were they fighting for? They're fighting for basic civil rights, the right to drink at the same water fountain, the right to ride on the same bus, the right to sit anywhere in the movies, the right to get, just thought about for the same job. Even the 1954 Brown versus the Board of Education. Now, we know a lot of those things have turned around. A lot of those things have been quixotic. But you cannot dismiss the fact that without those struggles, there is no Obama.
No, that
See,
I understand.
Without
but
the struggles, there is no Obama. When a guy like the mayor of Philadelphia, Nutter, which is a good name for him, says, "I never asked anybody to vote for me because I was black." See, he's running away from the basic line. You could not have run for mayor before. What I'm saying is that we have to see that Obama's candidacy is a result of struggle, and that this struggle is truncated and limited by the context of monopoly capitalism and also the context of our lack of organization. But we must hope that we can see through this new level of organizing, that we can take this organized level to another level, to a still greater level. It's not you can't believe that the Obama thing is the end of struggle, but it represents another level of struggle.
No, I agree.
That's all I'm saying.
I agree with you.
Throw your vote away.
No, well, I disagree with it that it's throwing your vote away, and I do agree that it is.
Well,
I agree with you.
How does the vote count? If you vote for the kidding, how does that count?
Well, I think that the only wasted vote is the vote you cast for people who have been paraded before you as your only options. That's where I think that the vote is weakened, and this is, I think, the way that
the game. See, that is the game we offer. We don't have. You can throw that, say, this person is this, and this, and this. I just issued a newspaper that gave Obama a progressive program. We should put these progressive programs again and try to make these things well known throughout the country, and especially in his campaign apparatus. But I'm saying, in actuality, you can make the same statements anyway. You can urge different kind of policies for Obama anyway, but you should not throw your vote away. Those are two different categories.
I completely understand. I just disagree.
Mr.
Porter, I just want to ask you, because it's from you and to a great extent that I've learned just what the real Dr. King was saying, where Dr. King himself said, "My dream has become a nightmare," in part because I realized that the vote we voted to get the right for in the South has nothing to do with the economic conditions of black people and others in the North, and that we have to move beyond just worrying about the vote and the ability to sit next to white people at the lunch counter and so on, and see that there is something deeper going on here that we need to address. And that's why I see that the Obama campaign is a direct response from the system against that whole move and that whole politic that delivered us in Obama in the first place. And he is the system's response in a negative way.
Well, see, I reject this whole discussion. The first time I spoke on this, and the first thing I said today, Obama has absolutely nothing to do with the conditions that we're in. And he will have nothing to do with the conditions that we're in after November the 4th. And the problem is what Martin was saying, and I shared those things with you. Martin was saying that unless the political, economic, and cultural and social arrangements in the society changes, black people aren't going to get anything. But that's on us. That's not on Barack Obama. And it's because it's because we rejected Dr. King's dream. It's because we rejected doing what Malcolm said do, that we find ourselves in the position that we're in. We haven't said anything to the Black Caucus, who agreed that the Israelis could stay in Lebanon as long as they wanted to. We haven't said anything to this chump mayor we got, who's basically eliminating education, firing people on a regular basis. These are the things that when I look at us and hear us, on November the 4th, you got to ask yourself, if McCain gets in, what will happen to black people if there are two more conservative, i.e. fascist Supreme Court justices? What are you going to say to black people then? Well, it was a lesser of two evils, and he's in. In politics, whether it's in the streets or wherever it is, one has to make alliances. One has to know what time it is. And what do you do in a given time? We find ourselves in this position.
Can I just ask
not because Obama is running, but because we haven't done a damn thing.
Now, that I completely agree with you, which is why I'm arguing that we need to, in part, begin doing that or help doing that by going somewhere else with the vote. But what evidence?
But where else would you go with the vote?
Well, like I'm saying, with Cynthia McKinney.
But that's not going to happen.
But as you just said, Obama has nothing to do with the condition of black people, so why should we blindly support him? Why should we show that through a program? But let me ask you this real quick, because we got to take a break in 1 minute. But what evidence do we have that Obama's selection of a Supreme Court justice would be that much different from McCain? We have not seen any evidence that he would actually move in a more progressive direction.
Obama does not have a reactionary past. Barack Obama does not have a reactionary past now.
But he has a
Now,
reactionary
he's not listening
staff.
to what's being said.
But yes,
in
sir.
terms of if you were at that convention, even what he said in a speech is more progressive than anything McCain has put forward. I mean, it's just
It was
that
a speech.
The idea of embracing radicalism is more important to you than the idea of ratcheting up what actual power that we have. I believe that the people will be better off with Barack Obama than casting a shadow vote for McKinney. That's what I believe.
Absolutely.
I believe that it is better that we follow that 90% and claim leadership than to claim leadership by going in the opposite direction, by enabling McCain by refusing to vote for Obama. That's what it is. Now, a lot of people are refusing to vote for Obama because they're racist. A lot of them are refusing to vote for Obama because they averse racist. They don't know they're racist, but they're racist really. But then people who think they're so far to the left actually join with the people on the right. It's dialectics again.
All right,
You're so
we
far
gotta-
to the left, you join with the people on the right so that you form another block against them and so that we're left with McCain. Do you honestly believe that it's better to have McCain as the president of the United States than Barack Obama?
In all honesty, I don't see enough of a difference to support one or the other.
That's absurd.
But
That's
okay,
you must not be listening to it.
We can deal with
You
my
must
lack
not
of
be
listening.
listening to it.
Mr. Baraka, we'll come back in just a moment and deal with my absurdity in just a moment on the other side of this very quick break. Joining us this afternoon by phone is Amiri Baraka, world-renowned poet, author, and activist. And joining us in the studio is Mr. Tom Porter, also a world-renowned author, activist, and a close friend to the station and this program. And we are talking about electoral politics, global struggle, the Obama campaign, Cynthia McKinney campaign, and many things related to that. So we want to welcome everybody back to the program. You were just listening to a little bit of Ife from Miles Davis, getting us over the 2 o'clock hump, and welcome everybody back. Got a lot to get to, got a lot of calls to get to, but we want to just take the time as we have the moment to welcome not only our existing guests, but also Rosa Clemente has called to join the program. She is currently running as the vice presidential nominee of the Cynthia McKinney campaign. So, Rosa, we welcome you to the program.
Thank you for having me, Jarrett.
So we've been...
and hello to Tom and Brother Baraka.
Hello.
So
Hi.
We want to pick up back where we were just a moment ago and talking about some of the problems now. And Rosa, just to catch you in, just lastly, it was being said to me that I'm not paying enough of attention to see the distinctions between Obama and McCain, and that and I think Baraka, you made a great point, even if I disagree, that I've gone so far to the left that I've come back in full circle to help those on the right, that is to get McCain elected. I do want to touch one quick point briefly that you mentioned last hour, which is that I think more of a concern that is not getting enough attention, even for those who are supporting Obama, is the issue of the theft of the last two presidential elections, that it was an absolute theft through electronic voting machine manipulation that caused the victory to go to Bush and not Kerry or Gore, and it was not those who were supporting so-called third or alternative party candidates. But just wanted to make that point. Rosa, why is it important, or why do you think it's okay now for people to support your campaign, even if it means a threat to the election of a Barack Obama?
Well, I mean, I don't see social justice as a threat.
Oh, geez.
And, I think that it's a historical time, and I clearly see the difference between the Republicans and Democrats. But, for someone that grew up in every year of their life until they came to political independence and maturity for themselves, was always told that the Democrats, especially coming from New York City, the Bronx, being Puerto Rican, everyone always in my family, it was never a doubt that you always went with the Democrats, you always went with the Democrats. And when I started my thesis at Cornell, and I spent the summer, and I understood why the issues of my island were still not being addressed, when I began to be mentored by former political prisoners or was mentored by Dr. Turner up at Cornell, I was always taught to vote my principles and values from that moment on. So in 2000, when I was a Green Party member and voted for Ralph Nader, same in 2004, and in 2008, whether it would have been you or Cynthia McKinney or someone else, I'm voting based on principles and values. And although I see the clear difference between a Barack Obama and a John McCain. I don't think for my generation we can afford the lesser of two evils anymore. Maybe that works for certain people, but it doesn't work for me.
Well, that means you'll probably get the worst of two evils. See, the point is politics is not just an ideological discussion about principles. It's about the seizure of power, and one of these people will be the actual president. You will not. Cynthia McKinney will not. But one of these people will. Either McCain or Obama will. I am saying that it would be better for us, especially for the Afro-Americans or Latinos, to have Obama as the president. That's what I'm saying. You know, and times have changed rapidly. And one thing I think what you said about it was the theft that stole the election, not the fool Nader. First of all, aside from the fact that that Nader's thing in Florida made it possible for them to scramble up enough confusion to steal that election, but the point is this: both Kerry and Gore refused to fight that. You know, I remember Jesse was in the street in Miami when that stuff went down, and Gore pulled him back off the street, which again is what I was lecturing Jesse about, hooking up like that. And then the fact is, when the Black Caucus went to the Senate and tried to speak on that election being fraudulent, who was it that refused to give them the floor and let them speak? Gore. To me, they were too linked up with that party. I hope that we will be able to put more pressure on Obama. And I think I will say this: if this election is stolen, I'm calling all these people to disrupt this country. You understand?
Well, I would agree.
Excuse me. Then it would be time. Really to start the question of not only organization, because there's a lot of organization around Obama that doesn't exist around your candidacy or McKinney's candidacy. Is the time to utilize that form of organization that already exists and turn it toward, actually the most radical display of demand for justice in that election. But I don't see that happening. But I don't see that. With the fact that 90% of the Afro-American people support Obama, there is the basis in that organization as it exists objectively. There is a force in that if accessed in the proper way, with the proper kind of understanding of what a united front is, that level of organization is only equaled by the force of objective organization during the civil rights movement. There's been no level of organization. You could say around Jesse there was some, but there's been no level of organization objectively that existed like this since the civil rights movement. And we have to utilize it, not just stand around and criticize it and say that we're too hip to go with the masses, Well,
that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying, and I've never said that.
No, that's what you're saying to me.
No, that's not what I'm saying. and I respectfully listened, and as an admirer of your work, as someone that has been. No, I'm saying that I respect everything that you said, and in many facets I agree, especially around the voter integrity, because it was the Green Party in 2004 that filed the initial lawsuit in Ohio that told us again that vote was stolen. And those were not Green votes that were counted under the Green Party lawsuit. Those were Democratic votes. So I completely agree on the basis of integrity and an election integrity that at the end of the day, I don't feel white people in this country, the majority of them, no matter what they say, will vote for a Barack Obama or a Cynthia McKinney. And that's the reality that I see. But as someone that also studied what you and Reverend Jackson and Ron Daniels did at the Gary Convention, and the reason I helped form the Hip Hop Political Convention with 12 other people was because of the stance that you guys took at that time, particularly men, that took the stance saying, this is not good enough for our people in this country. We have to not even talk about a two-party system. You guys were talking about that in the 70s. I found a place where I could actually articulate my electoral politics. And I'm going to be in that place, not just based on principles and ethics. I'm at that place because the policies that are being put forth by Barack Obama are still not going to alleviate the majority of American people, particularly Black and Latino young people suffering in this country. It's not. This is a man who calls Hugo Chavez a dictator, who says that the embargo should stay in Cuba, that just voted. Wait, I'm talking about policy now. We're talking about policy, right?
Well, you know,
because you said let's not talk about principles and ethics, so let's talk about policy.
Okay, let's again. This is WPFW 89.3 FM Midday Jazz and Justice. Rosa Clemente by phone, Vice Presidential nominee of the Green Party, running with Cynthia McKinney. Amiri Baraka joining us by phone, and Mr. Tom Porter, you're in the right in here live. Let's go ahead and get in on this.
Well, you know, first of all, I'm glad she joined us. I'm a registered independent, and I'm going to vote for Barack Obama, and I've already said that because I don't want it to be said that 90% of Black people went one way and I went the other way. I believe in that. I mean, that I think is principle. I would feel, if people want to vote for Cynthia McKinney, that's their democratic right. I don't have a problem with that. I would feel a whole lot better about the McKinney campaign if she had joined in some kind of alliance with Barack Obama than with Ralph Nader and those other people I saw her on stage with. That's like highly unprincipled, including the Constitutional Party candidate.
Right, but one problem that I have...
That she joined the stage at a press conference?
Well, but
she didn't join Ralph Nader. You know what I think is interesting is that now we're forgetting the 12 years of Democratic history that Cynthia McKinney comes to the table. She didn't join Ralph Nader. In fact, if you read the convention, if you read her run-up to this election, you know how many Nader forces have left the Green Party because Cynthia is not associating herself in that respect. She joined that press conference.
Because the Green Party has been fundamentally.
Look, I'll stay here as long as I'm respected when I want to. This is interesting. That's all. I just wanted to make my point, and just to that point, Tom. I'm sorry. Just to say that it's not an alliance. I don't think that's on principle to stand with people who have divergent political views, but who are saying, why are the Democrats? If Barack Obama and them really believe in democracy, why do the Democrats join the Republicans to keep us off the ballot in lawsuits in different states? If he's going to win anyway, and 90% of the African-American community, and I would venture to say 60 to 70% of the Latino community are probably going to vote for him, why keep us off the ballot? Why keep us out of the debates? Why not let the majority of people at least know that we exist? I'm not here asking for an endorsement or support from anybody. What I can't take, really, is the blatant disrespect coming, not on this, but in the left movement in general, the hatred being spewed on radio and print.
Wait a minute, that's kind of a red herring because I don't think anybody has respected you here today.
One second. Rosa, hold on one second. Rosa, Tom, everybody, one second. Everybody, one second. I do want to raise this contradiction that I do hear existing here for Mr. Baraka, Mr. Porter. It sounded like a moment ago you were saying that it's politics and proper strategic politics on the one hand for Obama and the Democrats to side with the Republicans to freeze out alternatives, but on the other hand, it was a lack of principle for Cynthia McKinney and not an act of politics for her to sit on that panel, not necessarily join alliances with Nader and the others.
She has no way of doing anything to affect that. What I'm saying about McKinney. The positive things that she's saying, we should be together as a left bloc, saying those things, being at those conventions, passing out those leaflets. We should be unified to try to affect political change, not just standing on the side trumpeting our principles. That's what I'm saying. Well, we should be trying to make political change. I was saying the reason that they wouldn't let y'all in there because it was politics. They didn't have to. But if we just came out with an issue of unity and struggle, and part of my demands for Obama is that we support the idea of a basic transformation in the American political culture. For one thing, there should be not just a third party. We should have a multi-party system like they have in Europe, where every kind of ideological group is allowed to run, you understand, so that it's no longer one or two parties, but you have to run on coalition politics.
Well, we
so
should
that
also
the whole
have
idea of United Front, coalition politics.
Right, but we should also have instant runoff voting.
France or Germany or Israel.
But we should also have instant.
That's one point, is that it shouldn't be just two parties. It should be a multi-party system. But I'm saying,
but it is.
What McKinney is doing, she could do as part of a left bloc to harass these people
Amiri,
and put forward alternatives.
Let me just kind of jump in here, because I just want to clear something up. I don't think anybody's disrespected anybody here today, so I want to clear that up. And if you think you've been disrespected, then like I'm sorry, but I don't think you have been.
No, I didn't.
The other thing is that when Baraka says that it is politics, and it's politics for Cynthia to be up there with those other people. One of the things that happens when you get involved with politics, you make alliances, and you try and hold on to your principles as best you can, but you make alliances, and you find yourself compromising on principles and a lot of other things. And if you don't want to do that, you probably shouldn't get in politics. As somebody told me once, that it's a whore's game, no pun intended, whether it's male or female. So once you get involved,
let's do that. I'm sorry, because we got a lot to get to. This is WPFW 89.3 FM Midday Jazz and Justice. I'm Jared Ball, here with you every Monday from 1 to 3 p.m. and happy to be so on this liberated masses medium. Let's go ahead, if we can. Let's bring it to one of our callers who's been waiting very patiently. Caller, thank you for your patience. Welcome to the program with your comment or question for Amiri Baraka, Tom Porter, or Rosa Clemente.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, good afternoon. You're on the air.
Good afternoon. I'm looking at Baba Baraka's piece on, rascals who are against Obama, whatever the title of it is. He says here, but before qualifying that, let me say that no amount of solipsistic fist-pounding about radical principles will change this society as much as the election of Barack Obama will as President of the United States. Okay, first of all, I think if we're going to discuss this issue of this year's election in this country and whatever candidate, we should be discussing less about individual persons and their voting records and where they stand on policy issues. And all the Obamanistas, and I'm using that word deliberately, whether they be from the left, whether they be former Marxists or whoever they are, I would like people to discuss people's voting records and their histories. So, for example, can we discuss, if people are saying we should support and vote for Obama and give him our money, why should we support him if he supports that bill about wiretapping? So, Baraka, that means if you're out at a protest protesting against the war or anything else, and he wiretaps your phone and he supports the wiretapping of your phone, that's okay with you?
Do you think
thank you very much
that's more
for that,
egregious than the stuff that McCain represents? See, I'm not talking about the kind of purity of your kind of principles outside of the mainstream. We have to deal with this as it is. I know what you're talking about, that whole wiretapping thing, but I would propose this. I would propose that whatever this liberalism of Obama is, and I said that even in print, and that article you're reading is one of 4 articles that I've come out with, we still have to support him rather than McCain, and that's what it comes down to. McCain has been with Bush 90% of the vote. You're talking about Homeland Security. You're talking about the whole national security government, things that are much more egregious than that one vote. But to single out that one vote and to run around clanging a bell about that vote and saying that this somehow makes him less qualified to be the president than McCain is silliness. It's that kind of nitpicking that the so-called left engages in when they have a whole array of great principles that can never be put into practice because they will never get into a position of power to put them into practice. That's what I'm saying.
So, I think the caller's question is still valid, that if Obama is not only supporting wiretapping but invading other countries increasing the military around the world. He has not come out, as far as I'm aware, and said anything specific about how he would dismantle this current Homeland Security state, and so on and so on. That how do we develop this progressive path? Because as I'm understanding, and I hear you both about this 90% of Black American support for Obama, but that 90% does not equate to any kind of substantive organization. That's just 90% of the population. Mostly,
but that's objective. That's objective organization.
Okay,
See,
but that doesn't. But how does
subjective organization where you have leadership and so forth? That's one thing. But the question of objective organization, where a mass of people are doing the same thing, the question is now, how do you supply that with the kind of subjective leadership? But
then based on that, my point is that basing a response to that is in like saying then we should just go ahead and all of us should watch American Idol because 75% of the country is doing that. I mean,
that's what you'll be doing. I mean, in effect, if you vote for McKinney, you might as well be watching American Idol.
I would say
have no effect on the vote.
See, but I would say the same thing about Obama. That's why he hasn't given any money to Black advertising. He hasn't paid any homage to Black political condition or so on and so forth because Black people are going to vote for him anyway. So why should he do anything to appease? He's for the death penalty. He said of Sean Bell's killers that we're a country of laws. We should support that. He said nothing that is moving us in that
because Obama understands this. He knows, and I know he knows this, that 90% of the Afro-American people will support him.
Right.
He also knows this, that is not enough to elect him.
Right.
That the real question is, how do you get the rest of the Americas, and you know as well as I do with these junkies, these American junkies, they're addicted to white supremacy, for him to go on to just to talk about Black issues constantly would negate any possibility that he has to be the president.
Not constantly. How about ever?
And this is the politics, bourgeois politics, in a monopoly capitalist state, in a racist state. He knows that he has that 90%. The question is, how will he get enough of the other people? And that's the important thing.
Okay, let's if we can, we're going to take a quick break in just a moment, but I want to see if we can squeeze in one more call before we do.
Yeah, how much time do we have? Because I'm going to have to get out of here in a minute.
Well, hopefully we go till 3 o'clock. Hopefully you can stay for another 30 minutes. Is that not possible?
All right. I'll try. I've got stuff to do.
Oh, really?
What could be more important than talk about this with our Jazz and Justice audience here at WPFW 89.3 FM? But can we take this call real quick? And then caller, you're on the air with your comment or question for Rosa Clemente, Tom Porter, or Amiri Baraka.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Peace and blessings. Let's all take a breath. I'm just tuning in, and I'm glad that I did. I have a number of things I want to say, but I know you've got a time constraint, so I'll just make one point real quickly.
All right, thank you.
The previous caller, I recognize her voice. She's called your station before, and she certainly is willing to have that opinion, but she articulates an opinion that I just don't understand. I agree. I'm not clear on the voices, but the gentleman that has been speaking about, we need to look at the bigger picture here. No disrespect to Cynthia McKinney and Representative Gonzalez that's running, but seems to me
Rosa Clemente.
I'm sorry. I do apologize.
And I'm sorry. Could you raise your question?
I'm just
We're running out of
late.
time. We're running out of time. I need you to get to your comment or question.
Sure. The problem is that we've got too many people on the left that are playing checkers. This is chess, okay? If we want to get some of these things passed through, some of these beliefs and ideologies, we'll have a better chance with an Obama administration than a McCain administration.
All right, thank you very much. I think we got that covered pretty good. Rosa, let me give you a quick moment to respond if you want to, and then we're going to take a quick break and come back and spend a good portion of the remaining time we have finishing up this discussion.
No, I'm right here. I'll wait till after the break.
All right. Mr. Porter, you wanted to say something real quick?
Not really. You're just saying the same thing over and over again. I mean, the fact of it is that 90% of Black people are supportive of Obama really means that 90% of the Black people want to see better health care, want to see better education, want to see a lot of things that they see would be better under Obama than under McCain. They both have a record, and they both have a voting record. And so, I mean, if you want to examine their records, I think people see who would I have a better chance with. And that's what it comes right down to. Who would I have a better chance with? And I think that 90% of the Black people saying, I'll have a better chance with Obama than I would McCain. And my dear mama's gone, but I know if I told her that I wasn't going to vote for this cat, she would say, boy, you a fool given the choices.
All right, well, let's stop there and we'll come back with that. Right at that point, what are the likelihood of an improved, materially, that is, an improved world should Obama get elected versus McCain? This is WPFW 89.3 FM, Midday Jazz and Justice. I'm Jared Ball, your host, here with you every Monday from 1 to 3 p.m. And we'll be back in just a moment with Amiri Baraka, Tom Porter, and Rosa Clemente, and a few more of your calls in a moment. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right. We're back right here with you, Tom Porter, live in the studio, Amiri Baraka by phone, and also joining us by phone is Green Party Vice Presidential nominee Rosa Clemente, talking a little bit about electoral politics. But let me ask you, let's start with you, Rosa, real quick. Why, as we left off just a moment ago, if 90% of black people are ready to vote for Obama, thinking that it will lead to some sort of improvement materially in terms of health care, education, and so on, why shouldn't they go ahead and do that? Why should they, again, make this what is ultimately is said by others a protest vote by supporting your candidacy?
I mean, they should go ahead and vote for who they want to. Like I said from the beginning, from when Cynthia called me for this nomination, I was not going out there to change people that were already set to vote one way or the other. I'm trying to build a third party. I'm trying to be involved in electoral politics that will support public policy that will affect the material conditions of the majority of the people in the United States of America. So I'm not interested in converting the middle class black, Latino, white student on a college campus, of which I come from. I'm interested at getting those 13 out of 14 young African American and Latino people in this country that as of today have not registered to vote. So when I hear people, arguing about why they should vote for Obama or McKinney, it doesn't even bother me anymore, because there's so many people out here that are completely disengaged and disenfranchised from a two-party system. So, that's the way I've come to it from the giddy up. And then comparing public policy, again, let's look at Cynthia McKinney's congressional record for 12 years that she served as a Democrat. And let's see the policies she put out there that were voted for or against both senators that are sitting there right now.
Amiri Baraka?
But, the thing is, the point I think is this, that those things that McKinney is saying and that you are saying, the good things that you all are saying, those should be said as part of a left bloc, saying those things in some kind of unified fashion to try to sway the electorate. We cannot sway the electorate by seeming, the perception, by seeming to oppose them. See, when you run, no matter what your intentions are, when you run, the perception is that you oppose the other candidate. I'm saying that it would be better to propose these kind of alternatives to these candidates based on having a left bloc, a united front, that will be saying repeatedly and relentlessly, well, what about this? Well, what about the relationship to Cuba? What about the relationship to the Middle East? What about health care? Those things have to be said. And by diverting people's attention, see, because I'm saying, if 90% of the people are going one way and you're saying, well, I'm not going that way, I'm going this way, then that makes your argument diminished to the extent that people in their perception will say, oh, I am with that, I'm with this. I'm saying better that we come to say that this is a critical support for Obama. And these are the criticisms we have, and these are the things that we think that even that 90% want. That 90% want these things that we're talking about.
I agree in unity. I agree 100% with you on the question of unity, because and you said it before, and I do agree that regardless, we should be coming together to have a left bloc, whoever becomes the president, so we have to hold whoever that person is accountable. I 100% absolutely agree with you. And as a regards perception, as every day goes by, and this is not a red herring, this is an honest truth. As every day goes by, it is teaching me something new. I'm still a young person, first time involved at the level of what this means, how things can be perceived as you hating or you completely, supporting some other candidate. I understand all of those things that are out there, but I still do believe that the principles or the policies that are going to come from a Democratic Party are going to be just as egregious when it comes to.
So let me ask this, Mr. Porter. Let me ask you real quick, because I hear Amiri Baraka's point about this development of a left bloc. Now, when I read this thing a couple weeks ago about the Rand Corporation study that said the best way to end terrorism is not through violence but incorporation into the political system, how is it? How do you respond then to my concern that Obama is in fact the response to the potential development of this left bloc, as opposed to being someone who could hear and implement what that left bloc actually wants?
Well, I think that the left has to engage in transformative politics. I don't support the two-party system, but I'm saying that a writer who I've read a little bit about, a guy named Lenin, he has something that's called left-wing communism and infantile disorder. And in that he talks about the Vanguard Party and what the Vanguard Party does, and if it does this, it is correct. But the caveat is that even if you do all of these things, and the masses don't understand that by doing those things that you are correct, then you are incorrect. And so it's about transformative politics. We have to not so much transform the Democratic Party, but we have to transform the masses of our people who want the same thing that we want. And to think that the masses of people are blindly following Barack Obama, that the masses of people are stupid, that the masses of people don't have a clue, is an infantile disorder. They do have a clue, and they read the same newspapers, they hear the same news, and they see China, and they see these various formations that are being formed throughout the world, whether it's in Latin America and what have you. They see the isolation of America. They see that America is going down, and quite frankly, they don't want to go down, and so they are fighting for space. And if we're not engaged in transformative politics and articulating our positions within, it's not about joining a Democratic Party, it's about joining the masses.
All right, this is WPFW 89.3 FM, Midday Jazz and Justice. I'm Jared Ball, your host, here with you every Monday from 1 to 3 p.m. and very happy to be so on this very liberated masses medium. Taking a break to talk about electoral politics, the Obama campaign, and more with some legends both locally and internationally with our community. Amiri Baraka, Tom Porter, and Rosa Clemente, who is currently the vice presidential nominee of the Green Party running with Cynthia McKinney. Let's go ahead and get to the phones real quick.
Hello, Jared.
Yes, caller, welcome to the program. You are on the air with your comment or question. Thank you for your patience.
Yes, how are you doing today?
As well as can be expected.
There are a number of points I want to address. First, this number of 90%. Well, one of the things is very clear, that the media that the corporations have controlled has kept the candidacy of Cynthia McKinney and a number of other people from the public. So obviously, if the public doesn't know that they are existing or out there as candidates, how can they then be supporting them? So that 90% number really makes no good sense. Secondly, when you go to 1972 and the McGovern campaign, this whole scenario that these two guests of yours have been talking about remind me of the battle between McGovern and Humphrey in 1972. And people argued the point that they shouldn't support McGovern because McGovern was not a winnable candidate, and they should only support Humphrey because he was the winnable candidate. The reality was that when it became clear that with all the dirty tricks that Nixon did in the 72 campaign, that you still had such a sizable number of people who supported McGovern's position anyway, it forced Richard Nixon, Mr. Right-wing, backwards, anti-peace candidate, to do a number of things, including getting out of the war in Vietnam, starting EEOC, starting OSHA, starting a number of other things, EPA, and those type of things. And it came from the fact that people did hear the other side, the alternative one, in which two of your guests has been trying to challenge that fact of people not wanting even to hear their point of view. Thirdly, Africa's in trouble. The multinational corporations are trying to put AFRICOM throughout Africa, U.S. military bases throughout Africa.
Well, what does that have to do with what we're talking
there's no question that Obama supports it. We must ask ourselves the question.
Thank you very
But I
much.
mean,
Wait,
McCain
who
doesn't.
is the candidate of the multinational corporations? Who's raising the most money from these multinational corporations?
So thank you.
It
That's
is
a very good
Obama.
question. Thank you very much,
cannot
caller.
preach to us about these things. The question is, what do we do about it? You
Right.
see, first of all, with the question of when you talk about McGovern, the problem was all of those people coming out of that Gary convention who were supposed to present the black agenda, which was printed, they all copped out. And they copped out to McGovern. You understand? But they did not cop out. They did not present that agenda. They covered that agenda up so that what he was talking about was like simple, like bourgeois democratic politics. I'm saying the same thing is happening now is that the black agenda or the revolutionary agenda or the progressive agenda is not being presented, and to present it in somebody in an alternative candidacy is not effective because people believe that candidate is opposing their choice, which is Barack Obama.
So, Tom,
the question is, a left bloc should present those alternatives as that, and not as a contending. The minute you contend, you say you ain't for bourgeois politics, but then you're going to contend on some little level that in perception means that you oppose the candidate of the majority is an error.
Okay, so
That's
but
what
Tom
I'm
Porter,
saying.
this
That's
is
an error.
but what I'm hearing here is very confusing because it sounds like to me that Amiri Baraka is saying we needed a platform to present as a left bloc, but when that happened in 1972, they were sold out. Now we're just supporting the
we
candidate.
sold out.
But-
That's true.
But we don't even have that platform
But
being announced at all.
The point of it is, Amiri and I were both at the convention in Miami in 1972, and the selling out. I don't really want to get into that because I don't really think that's germane. Because I find it interesting that this guy brings up Humphrey and McGovern, doesn't bring up Shirley Chisholm. I mean, so I don't want to get into that. I mean, because I want to get into people making points to make points. I mean, the Afrikaan story is an old story. I mean, the fact that it hit the newspaper, they already got military formations in some countries in Africa. So, you know, what happens is he just knee-jerked, his stocking cap was tight, and he had some kind of, I don't know, epiphany. That's an old story. And I don't want to really respond
But
to
you
that.
wouldn't argue that a lot of people are aware of that, would you? I mean, you wouldn't argue that a lot of people are consciously making a decision about Obama in despite of his position on AFRICOM.
Well, I don't know what his position. The point.
AFRICOM. What is McCain's position? You know, see that. I mean, to try to use Obama as a deflector of perfection, rather than seeing that in the context of bourgeois politics, is absurd, and it might help some kind of egotistical self-regard as the perfect radical or the ultra-revolutionary. But in terms of politics, AFRICOM is going to be in Europe, and it's going to be in Europe rather than Africa because of mass discontent with that idea. They got a Negro who's the head of it, you understand, and he's going to be operating from Europe, but the intentions are going to be the same. What I'm saying is that you cannot get away from the fact that there's a bourgeois country with two doggone imperialist parties, you understand, and to say that you ain't in it but jumping in it, running, rather than, say, opposing it as a left bloc, is not effective. If we want to begin to deal with this electoral politics stuff, all of these left people should have left blocs in every major city in the United States. We should be running electoral candidates in every city of the United States based on left bloc politics, on united front politics, and we should be trying to take that power inch by inch in those cities so that when we talk about the national elections, it is not just a yowl in the wilderness, but it carries some kind of force.
See, I find it very, very interesting that we've spent almost 2 hours really talking about Obama and the weaknesses or strengths of his campaign, the strengths of his ideology and what have you. And to me, that has really never been the issue. We should be talking about what is happening in this country, the condition that the people are in, particularly black people and Latino, what kind of organizational formations we need to do that. We should be talking about the real possibility of some suited up fascism happening in this country. We should be talking about a lot of things, but to spend this kind of collective, it's almost a form of collective self-hatred. All of this time, all of a sudden, we're putting everything on this guy, Obama, and nothing on McCain, and nothing on Barr, and nothing on Nader.
Well, see, this is the thing, though, and Rosa, I want to bring you back in on this.
I don't know why I'm here then. I don't know why I'm on this show.
Rosa, hold on one second. Rosa, hold on one second, because
that's not the subject.
One of the concerns that I have is that the opposite is being said, that everybody's putting everything on Obama, which is why the focus of this program, I think, is going the way it is, that most people are voting for Obama as if he is going to be the solution. And I don't think they're doing it as both of you have tried to outline. But Rosa, let me ask you this, because I do want to bring you back in.
Was getting the right to vote the solution?
But
being able to sit in.
But Mr. Baraka, hold on one second. But Rosa, let me ask you this, because I want to ask about this development of a left bloc at a time when you have mentioned it earlier that Cynthia McKinney had been in Congress for 16 years as a member of the Democratic Party. We saw what the Democratic National Convention did to Dennis Kucinich and the left wing of that party. Why, what doesn't that speak to, again, the nature and the reasoning behind your candidacy in the first place?
I have no idea what you just said because both of you were talking at the same time.
I'm sorry.
My apologies.
It's okay. No, it's okay. I have no idea what
what I was just basically trying to say was that this idea of developing a left bloc, it's something that you spoke to earlier a moment ago, that McKinney had been in the Democratic Party working and organizing for 16 years. We saw what happened to Dennis Kucinich at the Democratic National Convention in terms of his being given only a few minutes out of prime time, not really given much a run in terms of the politics of his wing of the Democratic Party. Doesn't this, again, speak to the nature and the reasoning behind your campaign in the first place?
Well, I mean, I think it speaks more... Okay, so what I'm trying to say is I think that the reason I chose to do this was because, first and foremost, I am a true community organizer. At the end of the day, I don't think that voting for anyone changes everything at one time. I don't care who's up in there. If the people if the masses of the people aren't ready to move someplace, they're not going to move that way. But I chose to run, and I think that Cynthia chose to do this now because there is a silent majority out there. Maybe it is a generational thing. I know about the Gary Convention. I wasn't there. That's the year I was born. But I try to think about where we particularly are as young people, what is really happening to us. And I don't believe that a two-party system serves that interest. But I also don't believe...
We know that. I mean, but how many people, young people, do you think there's no young people backing Obama?
That's not what I said. I've never said that.
That's bizarre.
I've never said that. You're completely twisting my words. I never said that. And in fact, before I quoted a statistic that said that 13 out of 14 young African American Latino people are not registered to vote, but there's still that one, and most of them are college students, and it has been the biggest voter registration drive probably ever in history. I'm out there. And I think that this has become way too personal. I didn't come on this show to completely contend with people who are going to go for Obama. I had a different feeling of what the show. I wasn't
prepared for you to come on the show. This was a surprise to me that the host pulled. No,
but you know what it is? This is why I'm trying to bring it back to like more of a tone of this idea of uniting in this left. And the one thing is, because I come from an organizing background, the hip-hop convention, Malcolm X grassroots movement, I've been on the college campus, I've been on the streets, I see the benefit of what's happening right now and where the masses may be moving. But I also see the limits.
Let me say this. One thing, let me begin with the McKinney thing you said about when, McKinney was defeated twice in Atlanta. She is probably the most progressive politician that we had in the Congress. McKinney came to Newark and supported my son Vaz in his run for council here in Newark. I have nothing but the highest regard for Cynthia McKinney. What I am saying is that she will not be president, and that we have to support that alternative to this kind of the last 20 years we've had of this Republican and Clinton move to the right, steadily to the right. And it seems to me that this Obama thing is, given the context of bourgeois politics, is the surest way to put a halt to this kind of motion to the right that we're going in. That's what I'm saying.
And I would respectfully, I would disagree. And I think that I might be in that minority. Maybe I am in that 10% of black people in America that aren't going to, vote for a Democrat or a Republican or might not even vote. But that's where I'm choosing to go because I've seen what hasn't worked. I've been supportive of people who we put in these positions, and no matter how hardcore we come at them, look at what happened after 9/11, how we were in the streets, how we said no to the war, how we said no to the FISA bill. And then I come out of the
How did you do that? You mean in the street, but how did that translate into the seizure of power?
Well, even with the war marches, right? Look at the millions of people that said no, no, no to the war all over the world, and these leaders still, with no accountability to the people, still marched on to war. And even the Democratic nominee isn't saying he's going to stop the war.
In 1972, I understand that exactly, but you have to be a student of history to see. Remember, if we had to put up with going to black and white water fountains. You understand, and the whole kind of overt segregation. To say that all of that stuff that we did not matter. There was only one black congressperson in the United States Congress for 70 years or something like that.
But I don't think that anybody. And hold on, I'm going to have to. Hold on, everybody. Hold on. All right, everybody.
Yes.
Time out. This is Jared Ball. I want to let everybody know that I am the host that pulled the stunt of bringing Rosa Clemente on, not to be a stunt, but to sort of broaden the debate and the discussion, and among people who I know are politically more in tune than maybe we could get into this afternoon.
I don't have a problem with it. I'm just saying.
No. I just want to be clear.
It's cool because we got more in common.
I know.
Everybody's in agreement.
So let me just ask this, because I know we only have a few minutes left. If we could just have each of you make a last-minute statement, because I think, Amiri Baraka, the point that I just wanted to make fun with that. That's all I was doing. But I think that the point that you raised is a good one about how does this relate to seizing of power. And I think that I and Rosa and others who are concerned, our concern is just how does supporting Obama relate to or lead us to that seizure of power. And I'll ask all three of you to give a very brief closing statement on that. And I thank you all for joining us. I thank you all for listening. I apologize to the callers we couldn't get to, and I hope we all get a chance to revise this at another time.
That the objective kind of organizing that has been done, the fact that if you say 90% of us, and that whatever that number represents, 90% of us are going to support a vote, that means objectively that many people are thinking similarly for whatever reasons. The question is now, how do we get into a leadership role with that 90%, rather than being I am the greatest leadership role of myself and 10 other people, and that's the question of sectarianism, the question of self-aggrandizement rather than mass organization. That's what I'm proposing, and then the need for a left bloc, the need for a united front, the need to pull all these sectarian organizations together, whether it's ANSWER or the CP or whatever these various groups are, the McKinney group, to pull them together and begin to deal with politics in this country rather than, say, self-serving minority statements.
All right,
okay, and I got to split.
Amiri Baraka, thank you very much for taking the time and joining us. Rosa, if you could take a moment.
I feel. Hello?
Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. Look, I feel I'm in the tradition of hip-hop. People hated on hip-hop in the early 70s. What were these young people thinking? What are they doing? Why are they thinking about these politics? And I'm a student of history. I'm a student of many, a leader from the black nationalist movement in this country, so I would never disregard that history. In fact, I think I'm in the tradition of the best of that history. I think about all the people who told Malcolm he was crazy, Dr. King he was crazy, Harriet Tubman, all those people. And I'm not just saying that to put out a historical announcement. I'm saying that's the tradition I'm following. And if it wasn't for those type of people, we wouldn't even Barack Obama wouldn't be running for president, and neither would a Cynthia McKinney.
All right, Rosa, we got to cut you off. We got to stop you there.
I just hope that people
Rosa,
just organize and keep moving forward.
Rosa, thank you very much. And votetruth08.org for more information on the Rosa Clemente Cynthia McKinney campaign. Tom Porter.
Well, first of all, I don't think a vote for Barack Obama is a step towards the seizure of power. A vote for Cynthia McKinney or any other candidate is a step towards the seizure of power. But I think that the fact of it is something is stirring in the black community, a community that's been dormant for a very, very long time, that something is stirring in the black community, and apparently in some segments of the Latin community and even in the left community, means that if properly organized, with ideological clarity. See, I don't know what you mean when you talk about the left, because that could mean left in, left out. For me, is that in terms of the great changes that have taken place in the modern world have taken place in Africa as Pan-Africanists or socialists, and the rest of the world as Marxists. And so, I mean, if you ain't really talking about that, I don't really know what you're talking about.